Hey everybody, welcome to Teal Tinted Glasses. I almost forgot the name of our podcast. That's how long it's been. Apologize for the absence. Got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. We're going to start with the NHL stuff. We're going to, talk about some NHL stuff. We are going to talk about the Barracuda. A couple of games happened over the last 2 nights. We'll talk about those and the season overall, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. Because we've been gone for so long, I think we had like a one podcast of the season. Maybe it was even like the first week of the season, and then we haven't done nothing. I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. Joining today is the one and only Mr. Hockey Jerk.
So right now the NHL is upside down. We're talking standings, we're talking amount of points guys are scoring, and we're gonna cover that in a 50 to 75 minute span of time. Be excited.
I thought we were going like 4 hours to make up for all the weeks we missed.
I mean, I'm certainly open to it.
All right. Also joining tonight, Mr. Kevin Lacey. Kevin Lacey, how are you, bud?
Hey guys. So in the time that we were gone, the NHL had 2 coaches fired, and as the longtime viewers and listeners know, that's like our thing.
I know.
And so getting coaches fired. So apparently we must have inadvertently striked until the NHL finally had a coach fired, or 2, since last year there were none. So you can thank John Stevens and Joel Quenneville for us being back on the air, basically. Yeah, I'm Kevin Lacey. Yeah,
Kevin, I gotta say that lip lettuce you got going on is amazing. Well, I just want to say
it is Hockey Fights Cancer Month and all, and yeah. So thank you very much.
Oh man! All right, guys. So there's so much. I'm just kind of like I have like some rough notes, but I'm just basically going to see where the conversation goes, and if it lasts 4 hours, then I guess we've made up for all the time we missed. Let's talk about the Sharks off the hop here, because I think that's the team we cover mostly. I mean, we do talk a lot of NHL, but we do talk obviously a great deal of Sharks. Sharks probably not off to the start that I think we would have expected before the season. I think like with some of the new players, we thought there'd be some hiccups out of the gate, but I mean, we're well out of the gate by now. Just some broad brush thoughts here. Like, what's working for this team? What's not working? What the hell is going on? Lacey, I'm gonna start with you.
Well, obviously, Erik Karlsson having no goals is a big sore on the Sharks season so far. Honestly, though, in that regard for me, and I've talked with Hockey Jerk about this within the last week or so, I think that Erik Karlsson is in a situation where the system doesn't fit with how he's played, or he's being used too well in the system, to where when Erik Karlsson was with Ottawa scoring all those goals and putting up all that offense, he was up in the rush. He was the go-to guy on the power play. He wasn't the, basically, as I've been putting it, the pass-through guy. Mm-hmm. Like, basically, they've been using him to get the puck from left to right and right to left. They just play it back through Karlsson and out the other side. And so when the time comes for him to actually shoot the puck, which is what we'd like to see him do, there's no lane for him at all. I don't know if the forwards need to get further away from the blue line to draw the attack, the forecheckers off of him, what's going on, but just whatever Pete DeBoer and the coaching staff are doing, it's not working well with him. And because he's the marquee guy now this season, because I actually think Brent Burns has played better this season so far. Maybe not defensively, but I think offensively he has. So
leads the team in points.
Yeah. So what's working with Brent Burns that isn't with Erik Karlsson? The coaching staff needs to figure that out.
Well, and I think too, Kevin, I think you brought up a good point, because like you said, Erik Karlsson is the guy. You're going left to right, right to left. You're starting your breakout with Erik Karlsson while with Brent Burns, it's get him the puck and then he's just gonna fly up the ice with caution to the wind. And we see him on the power play. Like how often do you see a defenseman in the Ovechkin spot? And that's something we've seen with Brent Burns that we haven't seen with Erik Karlsson, despite the fact that Karlsson's slap shot is nothing to look away from as it is. And I just think generally, to kind of piggyback what you're saying, I think DeBoer needs to look at Erik Karlsson the way he looks at Brent Burns, where it's like, go do your thing. We're going to play you with a guy who can make up for it. And I think that's, if you're looking for a difference to identify, I think that's where you have to start.
I think the thing with Brent Burns and Karlsson, sticking on that vein, I'm not saying that Karlsson's a guy that can't shoot the puck, but I feel like his bread and butter is the way that he can move the puck from the blue line. Yeah, he can get a good shot on too, but I feel like his playmaking is really where he excels, especially on the power play in the blue line. Like some of the passes that he makes are just silly. Like they're just silly good. And it bothers me that, when they took him, 5-on-5, when they took him away from Vlasic, like I'm a big fan of Karlsson with Vlasic. I thought it was working well. The numbers said it was working well. Obviously, it wasn't working so great on the score sheet, and they did arguably have a bad game. I think it was against Nashville. But overall, they had been really good together. I don't really care for this Karlsson-Dillon experiment. And there's just there's just a lot of things that I question. And look, I'm not an NHL coach. My NHL coached games is 0. So, take anything that I say here with a grain of salt. But as a fan, as a guy who's watched hockey for a long time, there are a lot of really interesting decisions being made, and I feel like they're to the detriment of the team. And I'm not saying it's all coaching, and I think that it's easy to just dump on coaching right now. I think, when you listen to a guy like Logan Couture talking in the locker room after the game last night, I mean, he's been very vocal this year about things that have been frustrating him, and very, I don't know. I'm starting to like Logan, because normally in Logan I kind of found his petulance to be a little annoying before, but now I kind of like the fact that he's speaking the truth a little bit. And there's a lot of things not working, but I wonder how much is behind the bench and how much is on the ice there, and it might be an equal dose of each, to be completely honest. Any thoughts on that?
I could see that. I mean, it's it's up to everybody who's out there to try and right the ship. Obviously, DeBoer makes the lineup decisions. You want him to put the best lineup out there, but at the same time, DeBoer's not the one putting on the skates. It's the players. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been talked about quite a bit frequently by media, players, and all the like. The Sharks more than anything need to shore up their game in front of Martin Jones / Aaron Dell. I think when they get to the offensive zone, I think it's a different story. I think they're fine. But defensively, there have been struggles to break out the puck. There have been struggles to get the puck when the other team is getting the cycle going. And I just think, the last 2.5 years, like the Sharks have been really good defensively, and it's the offense that we've all been kind of concerned about. And now it appears that things have switched up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that it's... Because I felt like with Ken Hitchcock, when he was the end of his run in the Blues and then with Dallas, do you think this roster can handle the philosophical change? Like you just mentioned, that they've been a great defensive team for a number of years now, but this season they've gone with a completely different approach, an offensive approach, and the defense has suffered greatly. Like, is it a personnel thing? I don't know where I want to go with this, but I mean, like, what is different to the point where the defense is so bad? Because all they did was change Dylan DeMello.
Right. And I'm sorry, but Dylan DeMello, like, as he's a serviceable guy, but he was the number 6 guy. Like, changing your number 6 guy shouldn't have this drastic of an issue on your defense. I mean, Dylan DeMello played 7-8 minutes a night. You're telling me that 7-8 minutes a night
only Joakim Ryan gets those ice time totals.
Right. Now Joakim Ryan is the 5-minute guy, but like like it's not like, I understand like how you change a guy out and there's things to adjust, and you can say that up front for Chris Tierney as well, but these guys should be interchangeable pieces. Like the Dylan DeMello is not to be confused with some Norris caliber defenseman. He's Dylan DeMello. He's a number 5'6" guy who's playing a little bit above his head right now, granted with Thomas Chabot in Ottawa, and that's nice. But I mean, this shouldn't have changed their defense, like this system, so drastically. Like the other guys that are chewing up all the minutes, with the exception of Karlsson, obviously, have all been here the whole time. And Erik Karlsson, to me, has looked fine. It's not. I don't know, and that's the frustrating part, because you say, okay, well, the new guy looks fine, and so what the hell's going on, right?
Right.
And you got, I don't think Vlasic and Braun have been as good together as they've been previously, and I think that's been the case for, like, I feel like that pair has been kind of slipping for a while now. And so the fact that they got reunited, I don't understand it. Again, weird coaching things.
The thing that I've constantly been hearing that frankly annoys me is how people say that there's a handful of new guys on the roster and they need to adjust and mesh and all this stuff. I don't buy into that. Frankly, I think it's crap, because about 90% of this roster has been here the last 2 years. So
right.
You can't tell me that they're not familiar playing with each other. And a guy like Erik Karlsson, yes, he's a different player. He obviously can take a game over by himself, but the Sharks have a handful of guys who are in that same ilk as Erik Karlsson. And, like Logan Couture said yesterday, you look at these adjustments as taking 1, 2, 3, 4 games, but not 17 games.
Right. And I mean, look at Evander Kane coming into the fold last season. Weren't saying that 2 games in. Everyone was saying, oh, look how he came right in and blah, 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 and fixed the team. And so all of a sudden are the lines, guys can't play well together under this format. That makes no sense. Like,
I think things were, and I don't want to say that this is Joe Thornton's fault, but I think that things were fine before Joe Thornton came back. And that's when Joe Thornton came back that DeBoer put the lines and the D pairs back to where they were when they weren't working at the beginning of the season.
Right. Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing too. I think though, obviously, Martin Jones, obviously, I think, yes, the defense hasn't been good, but like, is it time to be at least concerned about Martin Jones a little bit here? Because I feel like, from what I've watched, and I try to keep up as best as I can, man, it's like Martin Jones getting like a softie a game.
Yeah,
like I feel like it's almost a given. Like, okay, and this is his bad goal for the game. Like, I'm not saying that he's been completely abhorrent, but he's not been. Like when we started the season, and we, I think on our first show, I talked about how Martin Jones kind of has his funks, and then he has his great, and we've just seen far more funk than great for far longer of a stretch than we have, I think, with any time with Martin Jones. And I agree, the play in front's not helping him. Don't get me wrong, but you kind of need more from your starting goalie.
Well, and the boys at Circling the Cup and we were kind of going back and forth about that, and we all kind of agreed, you don't have to make every save, but make a save. You know what I mean?
Make the ones that really matter.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I'm not gonna pretend like I would be remotely good at playing goalie in the NHL, but when I see a guy at the faceoff dot let go a shot, and as the goalie you just stick your blocker out at it and don't even attempt to move towards it, to me that just shouts lazy. And I hate to use that word, but that's just how I feel,
Yeah, I mean, I know there was a chart out today, and it's just showing like his percentage in the different, the low danger, medium danger, and it's all atrocious. Like, low danger is atrocious, medium danger is atrocious, high danger, medium danger is kind of where Jones has kind of been okay, but usually made those low danger and usually made the high danger saves. And we would live and die by how he managed the low. Like, it just seems like he's just, I don't know what's wrong with him. Like, he's not, I don't think he's been Jake Allen bad, but he's not been good either.
Well, he must be hurt, clearly, right?
I hate that.
No. I think it's just I think the team's confidence right now is very low. In fact, if I'm not if I recall correctly, I believe someone in the media had a quote from either a player or the coach or something that said, honestly, the Sharks roster right now is feeling more confident playing in front of Aaron Dell than they are in front of Martin Jones. And for that to be said publicly is, I mean, in the way that it was said, really, I don't know how that's going to help Martin Jones' confidence any. And then Aaron Dell came in the Columbus. It was before the Columbus game when that came out. And Aaron Dell, I thought, was not very good against Columbus. So if that's the goalie you're confident in, then boy, there's nothing good surrounding the team right now. And I really don't like podcasts where all it is negativity.
For sure.
I usually try to bring something positive to the table, but unfortunately right now things are just very bleak. They'll get better, and probably the next time we're on, we'll be raving about how the Sharks are on a 4-game winning streak and whatnot. Ooh. But just right now, it's like, ugh.
Ooh. Let's talk about Timo Meier.
Okay, see, positivity. That's what I'm talking about.
I can do positivity. Timo time all the time.
Timo time all the time.
Like, it doesn't matter what time it is. It's just always Timo time, it seems. Timo Meier has been fantastic this year. And he's and that's the thing. Like, this team isn't terrible. Like, this isn't LA. Right? Like, there's things that are good about this team. And I know it's really, you come on, especially after a couple of really crappy losses, and you make it's the most recent stuff, and it's easy to dwell on that. But there are things that are working on this team. Like, it's not completely abysmal where we're just kind of staring into the abyss. The abyss is over there somewhere. It's closer than I'd like it to be. But
it's somewhere near Ottawa, I think.
But it's close by, but it's not, it's not like the Sharks are looking over the edge into it. Timo Meier has been fantastic this year. What a coming out party for him. It's so funny because I remember one time, and it's just, when we all make these silly takes on Twitter, I remember one time I was talking about, I was saying how, I think it was before last season, how I said, like, Timo Meier is a guy that I think is going to have a big season, and someone responded to me, I don't know who it was, and I just thought it was funny, and I'm not trying to pick on anyone because I've made a bajillion bad takes too, and they said that Timo time was over and it was the season of O'Regan. Well, that didn't quite work out.
Let me explain you a thing.
But I mean, it's easy to to say that with hindsight. Coming off of Timo Meier's first year, I think there was a lot of questions. I mean, look at how many times did we sit on here and we lamented the lack of Matt Barzal or Mikko Rantanen, and now, I mean, look at both those guys are great guys. I mean, Mikko Rantanen's having a hell of a year, but Timo Meier has really been the guy the Sharks needed, in my opinion. Like, the play that he brings, and now that he's actually putting pucks in the net, I mean, he's exactly what the Sharks need. He's got that sandpaper that, he's going to come in and he's going to lay a body on you if you lay a body on us. And him and Evander Kane, I feel like, they'll respond to things. And I think that, you could have a Mikko Rantanen at this point. Look at Mikko Rantanen's a hell of a player. You could have a Matt Barzal. You know how we feel about Matt Barzal, but neither of those guys, I think, would be, both of those guys would be just another, I don't know, they'd just be kind of, they'd be another player in the system, I think. Like, they'd be good, but they don't bring those elements that Timo Meier brings that, when you combine it with the goal scoring, makes it better.
Absolutely, which is why the Sharks drafted him when they did, even though he wasn't the sexiest pick at the time of the draft.
Right.
Timo Meier. From now on, I think when we start the shows, if we ever do like full-on intros again, instead of like it's Wednesday, November, blah blah blah, we'll just say it's Timo time, and this is Teal Tinted Glasses. Meier's been a revelation, and he's not just been a revelation here. I mean, he's getting league-wide recognition at this point, which is
as well he should.
Awesome.
Yep.
I mean, at this point, we're one called goal away from him being All-Star MVP runner-up here in January, right? Because he's playing like Owen Nolan right now. It's been fabulous to watch. What do you think, Hockey Jerk?
No, I agree, and that was something I kind of put out on Twitter. I think a week ago I said, is Timo Meier an NHL All-Star? And the more that he's scoring goals, the more I think so too. I think the All-Star game being in San Jose obviously, puts a couple eyes in his favor.
Absolutely.
But sorry, I'm just laughing at what Laurel said. But Timo Meier, like you said, Kevin, he's been firing on all cylinders, and to me, when I watch him play, he is the guy. I want to know, I want to know what Don Cherry thinks about Timo Meier, because Don Cherry always talks about being a good, smart player, and that's what
guy wears too much gold around his neck and needs to focus more on hockey.
Oh man,
that's thumbs up, and that's what I've seen. With Timo Meier, like he's on the ice, his head is always up. He's always aware of what's going on around him and who's by the net and who's got the puck. Like you said, Ian, he will lay the body on you if he needs be. And if you watch specifically his goal against St. Louis, and I believe his first goal against the Flyers as well, he goes hard to the net despite having the guy draped on him, goes hard to the net, keeps his stick down, and just gets enough on it. And that's the kind of guys that we being the Sharks need. How many guys, Pavelski tips pucks, and Couture and Burns, they can bomb it, and that's all well and good, but you need a guy like Timo Meier, who, and to a lesser extent Evander Kane, but who will go to the greasy area with the stick down and the head up, and is gonna go in, so to speak, go into the trenches when nobody else will. And I, from last year to this year, because I remember this time last year thinking, oh boy, it's going to be another rookie season where he's got 3 goals in how long? And, I would say since about Thanksgiving last year, he's just been the best forward outside of Logan Couture. And I think, if this is what he's giving us as a 22-year-old, just wait,
Absolutely. And also on Timo Meier, the most important stat in hockey, plus minus, leaves the team with a +5.
Boom. There you go.
I'm curious because I think his shooting percentage is a teeny bit high, and I'm curious to see how that's gonna.
William Karlsson could do it.
That's true. I mean, this is one of those things where you start to wonder if, just with the different with the changes in like the goaltender equipment, where they've tried to slim that stuff down a little bit, plus new stick technology, I'm starting to wonder if this is going to be less an aberration and just shooting percentages are going to start to rise a little bit. You have to wonder.
On that note, maybe that's what's going on with Jones. I mean, maybe he's still. I mean, they barely rolled out the new goaltender equipment. I don't want to blame goaltender equipment. I'm just saying.
Neither do I.
But I mean, they barely rolled that out during training camp. So right. I mean, maybe that's something there. Timo Meier, and something else to be said about him is the fact that he's been doing this with different line mates, like. Peter DeBoer keeps wanting to switch things up and switch that line up, and to our chagrin, as if you're watching on the show, you just saw Ian's facial expression there. Right on, Ian, because I don't know why all the jumbling for Meier's line. If that's what's working for you, you keep that going. Like, so it's even more impressive to me that Meier and Couture have been able to do what they do in all situations.
Right. And here's the I think like with when you talk about the changing equipment, there was a goal scored, I think it was on Connor Hellebuck, where you definitely said, okay, that was equipment, because it just squeaked through him, and he just was set, and he should have had it, and it just kind of squeaked through. Whereas Jones, I don't really like. He's just getting his corners picked. Like, I feel like I don't feel like pucks are. When I look at Jones, I don't feel like, oh, well, maybe that was like, I've never said that on a goal against that I've seen from him, where it's like, oh, well, he was set. He just, that just squeaked through his smaller equipment. I haven't really seen that. And that's just me. And maybe, maybe I'm off, but I don't know.
No, it was, it's like I was saying, I can't tell you how many times this year, last year, 2 years ago, where, you'll see Jones, even if he's not in position, like it's reasonable to think that he could get in position, and that he just kind of throws his arm in the direction of the puck, and well, it's in the back of the net, and now we're down 1-0 2 minutes into the first. Like, yeah, and it's I don't know. I'm not a goalie. I don't want to act like I know everything, but when you start to see the same pattern over and over and over again, it gets concerning. And
Mm-hmm.
to your point, Kevin, too, both Jones and Dell have both been publicly critical of the goalie equipment. So I think you're absolutely right in assuming that maybe there's something going on there. But at the same time, I, I don't know. I
Yeah,
feel
your
like as a professional,
fundamentals should still be able to kick in at
yeah,
some point. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. I feel like as a professional, I feel like you should be able to kind of know how much room you have to maneuver with and know how to, like you said, your fundamentals.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, I understand, like, people are saying like guys are getting bruised and stuff, but I mean, you're supposed to stop the puck. That's your job. If you can't stop a puck, I don't know. Maybe.
I'm just curious, guys, because I have not looked into this.
Sure.
Usually, this is something I do. Is goal scoring up this year from last? Because goal scoring was way up last year from the year before. Is it continued that trend,
It
or
was
is
up
it just that
earlier.
all the California teams can't stop the puck outside of John Gibson?
I think it no, it was definitely up, but I feel like it's like the same as last year and it's starting to drift back down. Like to start the season we had those, some of those wild games that were like 11, 12 goal games, but now you're starting to see things kind of go back to normal, which I think we saw last season too. A
Okay.
really goal explosive October, and then by November-ish things started to come back down a little bit. Although there's been some really, notable goalies that have not been fantastic. So
Yeah.
that doesn't help anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we as Sharks fans are alone in this situation.
No.
Anaheim fans are upset, Pittsburgh fans are upset, Toronto fans are upset, but they're always upset.
Well, for sure.
So there are a bunch of marquee teams that were expected to do really well that are just kind of hovering or fluttering right now. So we'll see how things go.
Yeah, I mean some guys have bounced back, but I mean like there's been some guys though that you would just expect more out of, like even Hellebuck's only got a 909 right now. Bobrovsky 909. Just going through some of the more notable names.
If
Braden Holtby,
there was a
903.
change to be made here on November 10th, because that's only a month, it's only slightly over a month in the season, but if there's a change to be made right now on the roster, where would you go with that?
Defense. I think I think Burns with Ryan I think is fine. To your point, Kevin, Brent Burns offensively is having a really good year, and I think that helps with him being with Joachim Ryan, who we all know, especially you, is very smart, sound defensive player. But I think the same needs to be done with Erik Karlsson, and that's not to say that Erik Karlsson is irresponsible defensively, because he's not. But he's that same kind of guy where he needs to, run rampant and tear the world on fire or set the world on fire and kind of put his stamp on a game. If you guys recall, the game against Dallas in the first period, Erik Karlsson was flying around the ice, and he probably had at least 3 or 4 grade A scoring chances that I can remember. And then, coming into the latter half of that game, whether it was coaching or whether it was a player's decision or whatever, he wasn't flying around the ice like he was in the first period. And I think the score of the game and probably Karlsson's advanced stats were indicative of that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I don't know what I would do. Like honestly, I don't really have an issue with the roster as it stands. I just have an issue with how it's being used.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you're saying Joel Quenneville should be our coach.
I'm saying maybe someone should be our coach, or maybe Peter DeBoer should figure it out. I don't like. Well, but I mean, we have to talk about this because I mean, he's basically been fired on Twitter, I think, 1,000 times this year so far.
Yeah. And believe it or not, none of it has been me, and I've been on the not my favorite coach bandwagon for the last 3 years.
Right. I'm really frustrated with Peter DeBoer though. Like, and normally I'm not like I hate saying things like, oh, maybe he's lost the room, but when when we say we talked about earlier about how the defense is suddenly just taking a huge nosedive, maybe Peter DeBoer, like, is he just not getting through to the players anymore? I mean, we all know that coaches have a shelf life and some are longer than others. And I can't help but wonder, like, has Peter DeBoer just run his course in San Jose? And the part that bothers me the most is I look at this team on paper, and again, games aren't played on paper, but this is one of the best teams, if not the best Sharks team we have ever assembled. And now, obviously, I don't think it's Peter DeBoer's fault that Martin Jones is having little issues in goal. Like, there's some things that Peter DeBoer just cannot control. That being said, I don't know. I look at how this team, in my opinion, is underachieving, and I just can't. I don't know. Like, to me, it's like, Doug Wilson. Like, are you going to let this ride? Because there's a part of me that says, like, the opportunities, like, this is your in, right? Like, this was supposed to be the all-in year. Everything gets more difficult from here. Are you going to let it ride with this coach that's making weird decisions, and that really frustrates me, that I feel that sometimes the Sharks players have to be better, but some of the coaching decisions have been just mind-boggling. And for me, that's a problem. And I feel like it's going to be a wasted opportunity if Peter DeBoer is still on this bench at the end of the year and things haven't turned around.
Yeah, well, and like you said, DeBoer, just lineup decisions he's making in general. Like, even if the Sharks are doing really well, like I said, the run with the stretch of games without Jumbo Joe, like, the Sharks were playing really good hockey in that time, and then Joe Thornton comes back, and it's like, okay, Carlson's going to go back with Dylan. Chartier is going to go back to the press box, and we're going to have Barclay Goodrow as the 4C. Now, Barclay Goodrow's been good, but Rourke Chartier has not been any worse, in my opinion. So it's like, if it's working, if you're winning games, why change it? And I mean, I don't want it to come off like I don't want Joe Thornton in the lineup. I absolutely do. He's a fantastic player and a fantastic person. But why, when he's gone, you make changes and they work, and then when he comes back, you revert to the original, and all of a sudden it's not working? Like, there's just something not, like, firing there,
I was going to say that I feel that part of it is, we've said for years that the Sharks need to basically graduate. It needs to be Couture's team. It needs to be now Meyer's team, Hurdle's team. Hurdle was great before he got injured. It needs to be those young, promising kids' team. And I feel that Joe Thornton, while being a great Hall of Fame hockey player, he's also kind of a polarizing hockey player in a way, and where it's always got to be through Thornton and through Pavelski when they're around. And so even if Thornton's in that fourth line role, he's not really in that fourth line role. And I think it's just, I feel it's time to move on from Thornton, period. No matter how great he is. Let the kids survive in the water on their own without their water wings. And with Thornton in the lineup, it just doesn't happen.
Oh, at the end of the season, I'd go one further, and I'm walking away from Joe Pavelski, too, as a UFA.
Yep.
I'm walking away from both next year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a fast game, and those are two not fast players, plus, you've got, like, we've talked about Timo Meier, but even Kevin Labanc, again, quietly having a very good season, aside from a stretch of games where he was really gripping the stick really tight. But, these two guys are obviously having good years. Suomela, with Sorensen's having a good year. If we can just add to that list as well, and by all means, if you disagree with me, please let me know, but I think we should walk away from Jonas Donskoi too.
The chat is saying Melker Karlsson.
Top line Melker Karlsson.
Okay, we're gonna get to Melker in a minute, because that's an interesting topic in itself. But I don't know, like, I'm the Donskois, the Karlssons. I mean, these are, the Tyrannies, the DeMellos. These are interchangeable pieces. These guys are not I think that's some things we do this as fans, where we overvalue certain players. Mm-hmm. Like, I just, yeah, Donskoi. I mean, if they can find a different player, then maybe you move on from Donskoi or Karlsson. But these guys, like,
Chmelevski.
I know these guys can't be like.
He's a year away, though.
Yeah, he's probably a year away. But this is the problem, though, is that, like, there's too much emphasis on these guys and not enough. And in my opinion, the fan base, there's way too much emphasis on these bottom 6, bottom 9 guys, and not enough emphasis on the real pain that needs to happen, and that's the walking away from Pavelski, the walking away from Thornton, the walking away from Justin Braun.
It's the nostalgia factor.
And I get that because I'm the same way with Thornton. But you know what I mean? Like, that's where I feel like, yeah, you get rid of Melker Karlsson, but is that going to make a marketable difference? Like,
right. We're not relying. The Sharks are not relying on Melker Karlsson to be the Ovechkin on the team. Like,
right.
If he gets moved, it's just, Gambrell gets moved into that slot or something like that.
Right, and then we can hate Gambrell because we have to hate somebody. Like, somebody on the team has to be hated. And right now it seems to be Melker Karlsson, as I like to call it, the rise and fall of Melker Karlsson, because when he first came, we all loved him, and then we've kind of just soured on him.
Well, it's just like, to me, like, coaches now talk about the 4-line attack and, guys from top to bottom making an impact. But, I mean, what is Melker Karlsson's 1 assist doing for us?
I don't know. Is he still killing penalties okay?
I mean,
I don't know.
He's still killing penalties, which is fine. But, at a $2 million cap hit, like, if you're trying to re-sign Erik Karlsson, you want every penny you can spare.
Absolutely. That I don't disagree with. And that's where Donskoy comes in too, I think. Donskoy is almost $2 million. I don't understand $2 million Melker Karlsson. This is true.
Well, and I don't, Donskoy is obviously a nostalgic person. He's obviously a popular guy, but I don't see it. I've never really saw it, as those who listen know. If you've seen that meme of the guy at the table where it says "Change my mind," Jonas Donskoy is the new Matt Nieto. Changed my mind. But yes, that's my bold take for you. But I just, like, it's there's always, when he underperforms, and this is going back to the season after the Stanley Cup final run, there's always a reason why he didn't get going. Oh, he separated both of his shoulders. Oh, he was on the fourth line, and yes, but you get my point. Like, there's always a reason. It's never just, I had a bad year.
Right. Thank you. And I think what you just said applies to a lot of situations.
I think so too.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's just okay. Like, the Sharks have been fortunate the last 2-3 years to be in a spot where these guys can go, and guys can, from the Barracuda or wherever, can come in, and it's been a seamless transition. I mean, I don't know. You said he's a year away, guys, but Chmelevski's stats now tell me that he should get another long look next year, honestly.
Well, no, I mean, because he is not eligible to play. That's what I meant.
Unless he makes the team out of camp. I feel like here's the thing with you obviously you got to be careful though too with that thing, because we've seen the jump to junior to pro, and that's a tough one, especially when you're making the jump from junior to the NHL, not just to pro, but to the NHL. And I don't know. Christine had a question though, and if we were a coach and we had to keep Thornton, but still, considering what else, how would you set up the lines? I would just put Chartier in over probably Melker Karlsson at this point. Like, I would keep Couture with Hurdle and whoever works with them right now. I feel like Couture, Hurdle, and Meyer has been a good thing. I mean, you could Timo Meyer's been good. You kind of just stick him anywhere at this point. I like I like Thornton with Gaudreau and Sorensen. I really, for all the crap that I just gave Peter DeBoer, that's actually it's a pretty solid move.
And real quick, when I was coming home from work a couple of days ago, and I was just thinking to myself, where would I put Thornton? You know what? Why isn't Thornton with Sorensen and Gaudreau? And then that night I saw the lines. I went, oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice seeing Barclay Goodrow doing things. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I like Barclay Goodrow. I mean, and again, another interchangeable piece that you could, you could sub out.
But an inexpensive interchangeable piece.
Then that's the key.
Okay. Because Goodrow's been great. I think Marcus Sorensen's been great.
I would think the numbers would back that up too.
Yeah, I mean, for the role that he's played on the team this season, I think Marcus Sorensen's very, very solid. He didn't look bigger to me in training camp, but he looked considerably stronger. And I think it was Luke Shen early on in the season against the Ducks. Marcus Sorensen just absorbed a hit from 295-pound Luke Shen, and it was just like, okay, come at me, bro. And then I think Sorensen laid someone out like on the same shift, and I was just like, man, for being a wet noodle, Marcus Sorensen's a super tough guy.
Sorensen, didn't he fight somebody in that Ducks game too?
He probably did.
He did.
So
was it him or Carlson? I think.
If the Sharks were to change something, I mean, because to me, to keep Thornton, you take Chartier or Suomela out at the moment, especially when Hurdle comes back in.
Right.
But I would like to see Sorensen, if they really want to shake stuff up, put him up with Kane and Pavelski, I guess, because that's the line right now. And you move Donskoy down and just kind of really just mix everything up.
Well, and they had Sorensen with Joe and Joe in the game against St. Louis,
but I don't want Joe and Joe together.
Right, no, and that's the problem.
But I know, but I'm just saying, like you know, I'm kind of trying to corroborate what you're saying. Is like, you know, we're finally seeing him, you know, get more ice time to kind of show what he can do, and I do agree with you. I mean, the chemistry between Pavelski and Kane and even Jonas Donskoy, I mean, the three of them, it's undeniable. You know, why not just reunite that line back together on a full-time basis?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I think, I mean, it's weird coaching decisions where I don't feel like Melker Karlsson's been that fantastic, but he stays in. And look again, it's not like you're completely staring into the abyss. We've realized that Joe Thornton and Joe Pavelski together right now are not ideal. And, you know, maybe if ifs and buts, candy and nuts, you know, he finds his sea legs, then maybe you can reunite them at certain points in a game and see what happens. But I just feel like I'm glad that Peter DeBoer has finally gone away from what, you know, instead of saying, you know, which player is not getting those guys going, to those guys just aren't going, and which is nice.
Long gone are the days of Joe, and Guy.
Joe, and Guy. Which guy's going to get him going? Is it Melker Karlsson? Is it Mark Sorensen? Is it Barclay Goodrow?
Is it Mikhail Bodker?
Is it Tomas Hurdle?
Patrick Marleau? Is it
Kevin Labanc?
Is it Kevin Labanc?
How about Kevin Labanc? I mean, you want to talk about positive players? I feel like Kevin Labanc's had a really good start to his season too.
Yeah, another quiet, under the radar year. I know there was a stretch of about 4 games where, like I said, he was just really gripping the stick tight. You know, he was giving the puck away. He wasn't really doing a whole lot in the realm of positivity, I guess you could say. But I mean, you know, 11 points in 17 games. I mean, a lot of those are assists, but if somebody else is burying the puck, I'm all for it. And, you know, assuming he plays an 82-game season, I mean, he's going to shatter his career high by almost 15 points on that pace.
There you go. All right, so before we move on from the Sharks, because I feel like we got some other stuff that we should probably get to, unless we are doing a 4-hour show, and it's fine. We can talk about the Sharks all night. So Peter DeBoer.
Only if we have sponsors to break up the segments.
Okay.
Hey, sponsors.
Hey, sponsors. Hi. This is a Diet Pepsi. It's delicious.
And on SoundCloud, that is a diet.
Yeah.
Please subscribe to our SoundCloud, folks. At our YouTube.
I will say I'm eating candy, but I don't want to say what candy I'm eating. But let's just say whoever's paying the bills, that's what candy I'm eating.
There you go.
Are you eating Haitian fish? Because we couldn't afford the other fish.
Scandinavian sea creatures.
That's amazing. All right, so what would you do if you're Doug Wilson right now and you see the season's going? How is the lid off the red button that would fire Peter DeBoer? Is the lid still on? It's like, you know, the crystal box still, or like where is Doug Wilson's hand on the button if you're Doug Wilson?
I think that all bets should be off now that Joel Quenneville has been fired. And I know that Joel Quenneville has been on the out with that staff in Chicago for a while, basically since Mike Kitchen got fired last year. Right. But regardless, Joel Quenneville is like between him and Babcock and Trotz and maybe Gallant at this point. They're the gold standard in coaches in the NHL. And when one of those guys falls, nobody, except for maybe those other three guys I just mentioned, nobody else should be safe in the
NHL. I would say one other guy could be safe. Peter Laviolette.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I like Lavi a lot, too. So I'm with you.
Jerk?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like John Cooper would have something to say about that. But...
Ooh.
But you're right. You're absolutely right. And I'm just kind of thinking about it right now. I wouldn't say the see-through box. I wouldn't say it's open, but it's definitely unlocked. Doug Wilson got the key out and he put it in and he
We're
turned
just
it.
looking for the second key holder.
Right.
Yeah, he's like, okay, well, we'll see where this goes. Now, let me ask you this. We've got, I believe, Sharks are on a 6-game homestand right now. I'll ask you this. How on this 6-game homestand, how many losses does it take for DeBoer to lose his job?
See, and there's a part of me that says that, you know, it should take 3, and that should be it. Like if they lose the next 3 in a row and they're 5 losses in a row, that should be it. You pull the ripcord. But I just don't think Doug Wilson's going to do it.
I'd like to think the Sharks won't do that either. I mean, lose 5 in a row.
Well, for sure, but I'm just saying, like, if that's what I think it would, you know, that's where my button would be. I'd smash the box open, and you know, if they lose 3, especially in a row, I think you have to do something at that point, because you're entering the quarter point of the season, you're getting to American Thanksgiving, and it's not a for sure thing, but you know, usually the teams that are in our American Thanksgiving are generally the teams that are there at the end, and if the Sharks aren't in that picture, it's not impossible. The year they went to the Cup final, they were not in the playoffs at the American Thanksgiving. But it's still, in my opinion, it's a watermark that the Sharks should easily attain, especially in a division that is as bad as the Pacific.
No, you're absolutely right. With this, you know, we talked earlier about this year being the Sharks' year to set the world on fire and be the top team in the Pacific Division, especially with, like you said, just how not good everybody else is in it. But yet here we are. Yet, granted, they're either tied for the first or they're a win away from first. I don't know off the top of my head, but you know, they're close. So I would say long game, I would say things are fine. But again, it doesn't excuse going on a winning streak and then making your lineup worse. There's no excuse for that.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, is it fine though? Like, if the team, yes, they're you know, points out, and there's no easy games in the NHL, and rah. This team's underperforming, plain and simple. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No one can look at this team's roster and say this team is performing optimally. And there's one person's job. That's one person's job.
Yeah, I will say this. I think we all expected Erik Karlsson to have more than 0 goals.
Yeah, I think we expected him to have more than Dylan Mello.
Yeah,
who had 0 last year.
I mean, there's still time.
There's still time. I think that some of these things are being worked out. But again, you know, maybe not being paired with Brendan Dillon would be better. I don't know.
I'm glad they tried it. I really am glad they tried it, though.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you want to see if a guy like Brendan Dillon, you want to see if he can hang with a Norris Trophy winner, you know, 2-time. Actually, Norris Trophy winner, excuse me. But at the same time, if it's not working, just admit that it didn't work out. Go back to what worked, you know.
And actually,
have that be the end of it.
What's funny is that the big emphasis on the entire training camp was playing everyone with everyone. Like in training camp, one of the major points I tweeted about at Kevin Lacey 22 was you'd see Dylan with Braun, Dylan with Burns, Karlsson with He. Like pairs were not a thing in training camp, which is awesome. You want to be prepared for any situation. So how did that not translate? Like Dylan and anyone should be fine at this point. I don't know. I mean, obviously game action versus training camp action,
For sure.
two completely different things. But nevertheless, like they were prepared for this going in, and I don't know what has happened so far. Oh no, I turned into Nick Kiprios. Oh my god, get me off the air. What happened?
Oh man. For sure. So yeah, to answer my own question, I have the glasses open. I'm looking at the button. I haven't decided if I want to press it yet, but the glass is open. So it's all I need to do is just impulsively touch the button. And that's where I'm at with Peter DeBoer. Another Sharks thing quick. Joachim Ryan sitting last night. Tim Heed draws in. Thoughts on that quick?
Bad move.
Oh, your tweet was great. Can we pull up Hockey Jerk's tweet about that?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
All right.
I will pull it up, and while I'm searching for it, I will continue to talk about how you should follow our show's Twitter at, what is that? TTG Pod? Mm-hmm. Teal Tinted Pod?
Teal Tinted Pod.
Teal Tinted Pod, because if you want to know when the best NHL-centric podcast is going on the air, you got to follow them if you want to know. I mean, that's all I'm saying. I do it. All the kids do it. It's great. But anyways,
you are so much better than me because here I am plugging myself and you're plugging the show. So kudos to you.
One of us has to be selfless. I mean, one of us has to be.
I mean, you know what, Kevin? It's something that we'll talk about in your performance review.
Well, this is not going well. I've promoted myself and basically said everything that Nick Kiprios says on a daily basis. So at least Hockey Central at noon, right?
Ryan Suter to Detroit confirmed.
Hockey Central at noon gets a lot of listeners.
But anyways, I said, and I quote, I, for one, love Peter DeBoer scratching Joachim Ryan. How dare he allow Brent Burns to make stupid decisions leading to their pairing being a minus?
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on Joachim. I mean, I've been wanting Heat to get action here, game action for a while, just to get him into a game. Like, I truthfully believe that the only reason Radim Shimmick is on the roster is to give Tim Heed someone to practice with rather than being the odd man, seventh man in a drill. Like, but other than that, like, what are you doing? Assets are supposed to be assets, not placeholders.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, for me, I didn't like it because I don't like the way that Joachim Ryan's been treated in general. I don't think Joachim Ryan has done anything
you could really
deserves it. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying, like, Joachim Ryan's, like, the be-all and end-all to our defense core, but I don't feel like he's done anything or played so badly that he should be treated the way he has while other players, Justin Braun, get a pass. So that, I think that bothers me, but at the same time, like, you know, Tim Heed's a guy that I wonder if he was getting showcased a little.
I mean, it's very possible. I mean, how often do you see a team carry 8 defensemen when nobody's hurt?
Right.
Kevin, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but apparently I am Becky Lynch and you are Charlotte Flair.
Oh man. I wanted
Although actually the same person says that I'm Ronda Rousey because I'm the big name.
Wow, hey. There you go.
Wow. Hey.
Wait a minute. Kevin is a diva. Damn it.
Wow. Getting ripped here.
You know what? This is why I'm not reading the chat right now.
This is why sometimes you have to protect yourself. Peter DeBoer probably doesn't read anything in San Jose right now, and sometimes we just don't read the chat to protect ourselves. I mean, it's just how else do you go on as being a person? Here's my question though. And I know I keep saying we're gonna move, but someone else brought it in the chat that with Quenneville, you only fire DeBoer if Quenneville's in your pocket. And to me, I'm not there. Like, I mean, yeah, look at Joe Quenneville is a guy that I would love to see coach this team. Although I think maybe he, you know, Joel Quenneville's a guy I'd like to see coach this team a couple of years ago. Like, I feel like now the Sharks are sliding right where the Blackhawks are right now. So maybe it's not the best, but I don't like. I feel like, yeah, if you get Quenneville, it's great, but I don't really care if it's Quenneville or not. Like, my hand hovering over the button has nothing to do with who might be next. It's just based on Peter Boer's performance as I see it right now.
Sheldon Keefe.
Yeah, sure. Sheldon Keefe's another guy. Like, I don't.
John Stevens. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh man.
I think John Stevens is a great assistant. I really do.
You know what? He fixed Dustin Brown, so did something right.
Yeah, there you go. And that's a good segue, because I mean, obviously, now that our coach isn't fired, let's talk about some coaches that did get fired, and John Stevens is a great place to start. I kind of feel bad for him. Like, obviously, look at the coach is the easiest change you can make in hockey, because there's no salary cap issues, there's nothing else. But at the same time, it's like you kind of look at the coach and you look at Jonathan Quick's been injured basically all year. And the roster wasn't really built to do what it's supposed to do. Like, it wasn't, this isn't a fast team. This isn't going to suddenly be a fast team. And I wonder if it's not so much about whether, the team was a fast team. It's my question is this a firing because of namely two players that are supposed to be the next wave? And that would be Tyler Toffoli and Tanner Pearson, both not really having fantastic seasons starting so far. And I don't think last season was particularly great for either of them anyway, when 2 years ago these guys were supposed to be the next wave. And I wonder if that is more the reason John Stevens was fired than the overall results.
I will say this, because I am kind of buddy with an LA Kings fan. Playing Adrian Kempe at center certainly does not help. That's actually one of the only things that I've heard complained about, is Adrian Kempe being at center. But even then, I mean, that decor, like, the top is nice, but then when you get to the bottom, it's really tough sailing. And, they're not living by the sword and dying by the sword either. So
no, Jack Campbelling.
I mean, he was supposed to be. Wasn't he supposed to be the next Jonathan Quick once upon a time? So
he was like a 6th overall pick, I think.
Yeah, so
for Dallas, yeah. I like the Sharks are very fortunate that our next wave has worked out with Hurdle and Couture and whatnot. I think you're bang on with the Pearson Toffoli situation. I think, though, that are they in a situation like Tommy Wingels? They're far and beyond Tommy Wingels as far as the talent level goes and their scoring, propensity and whatnot. I think I did propensity, sorry. But those guys have battled a lot of injuries in the last 2 years, and I almost wonder if they're too fragile to be the next wave for the King, and which sucks, because they were really top prospects and top up young players, so there's that. And then I feel like the next wave of defense for the Kings all got sent back to Ontario. Like, now's the time. Like, outside of Ledoux, I don't know what you said. McDermott had a solid year for the Kings last year. Let's send him back to Ontario this year. What are you doing?
Fantenberg as well.
Love Fantenberg.
Yeah, like Tyler Toffoli this year, like just to go on that. Like, I mean, he hasn't been terrible. He's 4 goals, 5 assists in 15 games, which isn't bad. I mean, Anze Kopitar has only 4 goals and 2 assists. So, I mean, Tyler Toffoli's been okay, but I mean, he was supposed to be so much better than this at this point, wasn't he? And Tanner Pearson, I mean, 15 games, 1 assist. Yeesh.
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
I mean, Kevin's right. Toffoli and Pearson, they were kind of that next wave of being a top prospect. But to me, I always viewed Toffoli as kind of being in his own level above Pearson. And I think that 1 year that Pearson had that got him the big contract he's on out, I honestly think it was kind of an anomaly. I've never really been super thrilled with Pearson, at least as a goal scorer. And I think we're just seeing him come down from the high of that season, which coincidentally that season I believe Toffoli was injured most of the year. So, you know.
And I think a lot of it for the Kings is also, they are reluctant to move on from the old guard. You just mentioned Toffoli and Pearson can't be trusted at this point to be the new guard, but Dustin Brown fairly, he had a great year last year, so why would you move on from that? But again, for all the years that he really was on the downturn Shane Doan. Shane Doan had a fantastic year at age 38 or whatever. And then nothing in age 39 and then retired at 40. It can happen when you're getting up there. Dustin Brown's not 39 years old, but anomaly seasons happen in your 30s. For Dustin Brown, Shane Doan, Jason Chimera had 20 goal season 2 years ago, and he's not even in the NHL now.
I think, I think 5 points in 6 games, just to be the counter argument to you, Kevin. Dustin Brown, despite starting the year injured, I believe he broke his thumb. Yeah. He's almost point per game in the games he's played, and he's got 3 goals in 6 games, which is not a bad clip to be scoring at. Again, small sample size.
Okay.
And I agree with you. It's that same hesitance to move on from the old guard that the Sharks kind of experienced 3 years ago. But if you're the LA Kings, if you're Rob Blake, you're trying to sell them as a playoff team, as a cup team. It's hard to move away from the old guard when the old guard is the only thing going well for you. I just want to say, I'll pat myself once on the back and then you guys can talk. Ilya Kovalchuk leading the team in scoring after everybody told me that I was crazy, that him coming back to the NHL was a bad idea. I'm happy to inform everybody that I was right.
But yeah, he's almost at a point a game, and so credit there for sure.
Okay, real quick though, and we've seen it with the Sharks in the past with Martin Havlat, for example, where it's all right, Dustin Brown is doing well, but why are you waiting for Dustin Brown? Who else is going to step up? Okay, yeah. Kovalchuk stepping up. You can't have just him. You need 4, 5, 6 guys to step up, and nobody's stepping up for the Kings. You mentioned Kopitar, Ian is only, he's back down again after a amazing year last year. Someone needs to step up for the Kings, and I think that's why John Stevens is like a martyr. And I was actually going to go use the term martyr for Chicago here coming up, but John Stevens kind of became a martyr because of highly respected assistant coach. And I don't know if his word in the locker room got changed, or just if the Kings got complacent because they're like, oh, we like John Stevenson as an assistant, he'll be fine. Oh, what the heck? Now he's not our friend, our friendly assistant coach, now he's mean, Mr. John Stevens. What the heck? We don't like this guy. I don't know. I'm not in that locker room. I'm just saying, why is it that a guy like him, a guy like Glenn Gulletson, a guy like Tom Rennie, always have the attention as an assistant, but can't cut it as an NHL head coach?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Todd McClellan to a lesser extent.
Possibly.
Yeah, and then so they bring in Willie Desjardins, which to me, I just felt very uninspired by it. And I've always been long on the train of let's get some new blood, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Look, Dave Haxtell's had a hell of a time in Philly with a team that he probably should be getting more out of.
I think he might be the next to go, by the way. I'm just saying.
Yeah, Jeff Blashill's another, a guy who is, he has just a really crappy team. It doesn't always work, but the this is what's known coaching carousel in the NHL annoys me, and that's what this hiring screams. Obviously, I think he's got the tag of interim, so maybe they'll hire a different coach after the season, but I just what has Willie Desjardins done to get another NHL job?
Be a warm body.
He won a Calder Cup for Texas.
Okay, that's great in the AHL. What has he done in the NHL to earn another NHL job? And I could say the same thing for, Guy Boucher in Ottawa too. Like that was obviously I think Guy Boucher was so on the outs that they just coached for whatever they paid him, and maybe that's a part. But LA, I don't feel like LA's a budget team. Where they're going to be like, no, we can't pay a coach because our arenas aren't bringing in enough money.
Hockey jerk, I'm gonna let you go on Desjardins before I chime in on this.
Oh, all I wanted to say was that he's a warm body in the LA area.
Yeah.
All right, kind of under those same terms. I think that Willie Desjardins is when you say interim head coach, I think he's the interim head coach. I think he's a recognizable enough name to where
Right.
it's saying, okay, fans, we're not throwing away the season, but we're hoping that Marco Sturm might be our next coach, or we'll know what we want to do with our head coaching by the time next year comes around. But we don't want to sacrifice this season because we didn't bring Kovalchuk in for nothing. So here's Willie Desjardins, and we'll see what happens in 9 months.
Willie Desjardins. Hashtag NHL coach.
I love that Margot Sturm hiring.
Me too, and they also, I guess they've hired Adam Oates as an advisor.
Now, see, I'm not an Adam Oates guy at all.
No, but it's interesting like how they've done that, because like Adam Oates has actually done a lot of interesting, like he's done a lot more consulting, like freelance, than he's been tied to a team. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes, because I just think it's interesting because it's different, and you don't, for a guy who's so old school and disrespecting the game, it's an interesting approach to take when you're doing this freelance advisor. I think it's interesting. Like I think it's fascinating.
The Kings last year, remember, they had Pierre Turgeon come in as an offensive coordinator, because you got to give Rob Blake's regime credit for at least trying to think outside the box.
I do, and I do give them credit. And I think another thing too is why you don't maybe bring in a new coach to the situation. The more I thought about it, Vince G in the chat, and Willie's another coach that favors vets over young guys, and look at the LA Kings are a veteran team. I feel like contract wise, I mean, they're pretty bound up by the cap. Like there's a lot of contracts that they would have a hard time moving. They're not impossible to move, but look at the contracts you have. You have Fidafua completely forgets in LA all the time. You know what I mean? Like you have, you mentioned Dustin Brown. Dustin Brown's contract is a little, even after last season, that's still a little rich for my blood. So when I look at it, I don't feel like this team really has a direction right now, other than to just kind of play out the string of some of these contracts. So maybe Willie Desjardins, maybe it is a good choice, because it's a guy who's coached in the NHL before, and he can he can carry through.
It doesn't help either that the LA Kings are on the hook for a Mike Richards cap penalty for the next 10 years.
Yeah, it's minuscule though. They didn't get nearly.
Well, sure, but when you're a cap team like LA, it's the same thing as the Sharks. Every penny counts, right? And
yeah.
And even with Jonathan Quick on injured reserve, the Kings have $425,000 in cap space as a non-playoff team.
That's it's bad.
You know what that's called? The Detroit Red Wings.
All right, so
as seen on previous editions of this show. Please subscribe.
Move on. We'll go down to Chicago now, because I think LA we've pretty much covered. There's not really much to say. Bad team,
and they lost 1-0 tonight, so they proved our point.
Chicago, I found, was a little more interesting, because obviously, I guess something had to change. I'm just not sure it had to be behind the bench. Chicago, they got off to a hot start, but then things kind of come back down to earth for them. And Coach Quenneville definitely, gets the axe after, let's be honest, they missed the playoffs last season. This is a team that's, this is a team who likes to still bandy around the idea that it could still be a contender. I was kind of befuddled by this firing. I mean, I kind of get it, but I really don't understand how Stan Bowman doesn't take some of the arrows here too.
Yeah, definitely, because I feel like Quenneville worked with what he had, and I just mentioned the Detroit Red Wings. That's kind of how I feel about Jeff Blashill, where the Blackhawks are a victim of their previous successes.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to lose players to stay under the salary cap, but they did have to extend the contracts of Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, which meant that other areas of that roster had to be sacrificed. And you would hope that what you just said, Ian Stan Bowman, would have the foresight to bring in new pieces, and he did for a while. He did for a while successfully bring in new pieces that were cheaper pieces. Michael Hanzus to win a Stanley Cup, another Stanley Cup, but eventually that wore out, and now the Blackhawks are really faltering. And I think Quenneville. I don't know why there's such animosity now between the upper management and the former bench boss in Joel Quenneville and Mike Kitchen and whatnot. I don't know what happened there, but they definitely don't deserve the blame for the team.
No.
Well, and to your point, Kevin, talking about getting those guys signed, it's led to Chicago, yes, having to send some guys out, but we've also seen the last 4 seasons, and this is something I've kind of joked about with Vince G, but the Blackhawks reunion tour has been a very prevalent thing.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of where it went wrong. Good call, Hockey Jerk.
I mean, you've got Andrew Ladd 3 years ago, and I actually have a list in front of me. That's why I'm reading it.
Yes.
You've got Oduya and Brian Campbell 2 years ago. You got Brandon Saad and Patrick Sharp last year, and this year you got Marcus Kruger.
Yeah.
They have Marcus Kruger? See, I didn't even know. He's far off my radar at $4 million a year.
Oh my God.
I do remember he's making $4 million a year, but I did not even realize
I was watching a Hurricanes game, but it was the other team's feed, and they were like, "Oh yeah, Hurricanes sent out Marcus Kruger to Arizona, and he's with that team now." And I'm thinking, like, you're not wrong, or you're not correct, but I don't blame you either.
Here's the thing too, and obviously, like, some of these contracts you had to sign, right? Like, I understand you wanted to lock up guys, but and a lot of these contracts obviously abuse the former cap. Look, I think Patrick Kane's worth every penny they pay him.
Absolutely.
Jonathan Toews, as much as it kills me to say, not so much. The deals that have really, really hurt them, though, is on the back end, especially the Brent Seabrook contract, which I think is atrocious. And yes, that's with the benefit of hindsight, for sure. Obviously he was a lot better than he was when he was signed the deal, but you had to know, like, I look at the deals that the Sharks have that are just the 8-year deals, and I really don't want to know what the end of that Brent Burns contract is going to look like, because this is what I fear. When you look at a guy like Brent Seabrook, and even Duncan Keith, who I think is still a great defenseman, but look, Father Time's catching up to Duncan Keith too.
Yeah, Duncan Keith had a turnover, I believe it was into this morning's game against Philly. Just a really bad turnover that led to a goal, and it was like, wow, that was Duncan Keith that made that play?
Yeah.
I mean, we all have our lapses and whatnot, but I keep hearing more and more about them with Duncan Keith, and that's disappointing me because he was like one of my guys before he ever made it. So
right, and I mean he's like, and don't get me wrong, like, the guy had a hell of a career, but he's Duncan Keith's got to be up there now.
He's like 36, I think.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought he was over the 35 points. So
yeah.
I mean, yeah, look at these things are gonna happen, and obviously that was the price you pay to win. I guess that's why you fire the coach when everything kind of goes wrong. Because again, the coach, you can fire the coach. It's easy. You can fire a coach and hire a coach tomorrow. That doesn't matter to the salary cap. You can't overhaul a roster under the salary cap very well. Not like you used to be able to.
The thing with Quenneville now is I heard tonight that he basically has said, my phone is open for anybody who wants to call.
Right.
So because I was kind of thinking, Quenneville's what, 61, 60, something like that. I figured he might want to take a little time and maybe go to Tahiti for a month or something. But it sounds like, I don't know if maybe it's vengeance on his mind
Sure.
with the Blackhawks right now, but it sounds like he's ready to go for a team. So Hockey Jerk, I have a question for you because I know offline or off air, you tackled the subject of coach compensation, but I didn't quite understand because it sounded like you counterpointed yourself in it. So clarify the coach compensation for me.
It's kind of hard to obviously do it over text or message or whatever because you don't have the same tone of voice and meanings and all that stuff. But so thankfully, compensation for coaches is not a thing anymore.
Okay.
Because a lot of the times we were seeing, prime example, the Sharks mutually parted ways, mutually
With
in
Tom.
quotes.
Oh, that was like for a whole season, right? Like
yes,
half
they
a season, I think.
They mutually agreed that Todd McClellan should be fired.
Which was funny to me because they told him that in March of the season before he got let go.
Yeah. And so then when Todd McClellan got hired by Edmonton, they threw us a 3rd-round pick. But then when we hired Peter DeBoer, again, even though the Devils fired him, we threw them, I believe, a 3rd-round pick. Because, like I said, coach's compensation, even if you got fired, was still a thing. Thankfully, now the compensation is not a thing.
Good.
And I know I was this offline chat we were having with Puck Guy, and he kind of asked, "Oh, do you have to get permission?" And I think because he was fired, I don't think you need to ask Chicago's permission. I could be wrong, but I don't think you.
Here's the thing with the NHL contract. So it's a good thing. I'm glad you brought up the compensation actually, because I think the problem with the compensation was a good idea. The problem was it wasn't just used properly. Like I feel like
as with most things in the NHL,
right? It wasn't used properly. See replay instant.
Offside challenge.
Yes, like things that just didn't go according to plan. The idea behind the compensation was a good one because you had guys and the Sharks were like this for a while, and Detroit definitely was. Where there was teams where other teams went to recruit their new people from. So, you wanted a coach, you went to Detroit and hired a coach off their bench. Enter Todd McClellan in San Jose. Minnesota hired one of our assistant coaches. How many guys in the Detroit front office have gone to other teams? Jim Nill, guys of that nature, and teams would get nothing for them, right? They'd give permission to obviously allow them to further their career, but they would get nothing out of it for, And so the idea was in that situation was to do that. Now, unfortunately, because of the way contracts work, coaches that are fired are technically still under contract. They're still getting paid by the team. Unless if someone else hires them and decides to pick up the tab. Once the new team hires them, then they're obviously the responsibility of the new team. I think Quenneville's contract was up at the end of the year anyway.
It is, yeah.
But I believe that you would still have to ask permission to Chicago to speak to Quenneville. Because he's technically is still an employee, even though he's fired, they still have to pay him.
Right.
Something interesting too. Just I found by quick Google search. So the coach's compensation thing started January. Jesus, I already lost it. It started January 1st, 2015.
Oh,
and
I was thinking it was the year after the lockout, but it was 2 years after the lockout.
Yeah, and it was eliminated in December of 2015.
Yeah.
But
it was only a 1 year thing.
Yeah, they didn't like it because they didn't it never worked as intended. Again, it wasn't supposed to be to compensate you for hiring someone's fired coach. It was supposed to be for hiring someone who was actively working in your front office and then moved on to a different team.
Exactly.
That's what the compensation was supposed to be for.
And just looking at this right now, so Columbus hired John Tortorella like a year and a half after Vancouver fired him. Mm-hmm. But because he was still under contract, Columbus had to throw Vancouver a 2nd round pick.
I remember
which
that.
Is ridiculous.
And And just one last thing.
Okay.
Toronto had to throw Detroit and New Jersey each a third for hiring Mike Babcock and Lou Lamoriello, both of whom were not fired, but in my recollection, left on their own free will, I think.
Yes.
Maybe. So, I don't know. Stupid, if you ask me. That's why it's gone.
It was a dumb time in hockey, and there are many.
Let's talk. I want to do Cheryl's question.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So Cheryl in the chat brings up. Now that I've lost the chat, where did it go? There it is. She was asking if Joel Quenneville would hold out for Seattle, and that's something that I was thinking. I mean, I don't think so anymore now after hearing that Quenneville's anxiously awaiting going to a new team. I don't think that's going to happen. But the hot rumor has been that Dave Tippett will be the first head coach for Seattle. And
I like Dave Tippett.
I do like Dave Tippett. That's true. I think that the spat with him and Steve Downey at the end of Tippett's run in Arizona, it was peculiar, and I still don't know how I feel about it. But Dave Tippett, I think, could be an excellent candidate for coach. I also thought maybe he would be a general manager in Seattle, and then you bring in a guy like Joel Quenneville as head coach, and that'd be eye-raising to have both those guys in one organization. But from what I've heard, Tippett is not interested in a GM role, and Quenneville's not interested in a GM role, to just flip-flop that.
Right.
So I can't see Quenneville going to Seattle at this point, but I think it's a really great topic to debate.
The answer to that question is not Dave Tippett, sorry, Joel Quenneville will coach when Joel Quenneville wants to coach, because he is one of the coaches that can basically choose his next job.
True.
He's not going to be a guy who has to wait for the phone to ring. He could go to a team and be like, hey, what's up with your coach? I see he's on the hot seat. I hear you're not a big fan of Todd McClellan anymore, Peter Chiarelli. What are you thinking? Coach Quenneville is a guy who can go to a team and say, hey, I might be interested in coaching your team. So Coach Quenneville will coach when he wants to. It's literally when he wants to coach is when he will return to a bench.
Well, and that's kind of something we saw that with Claude Julien 2 years ago, where he literally rolled up on Montreal and was like, hey, you guys should fire Michel Therrien and bring me back.
Basically.
And they did.
Actually, the conversation went bonjour.
But I like that, Kevin, I like that you mentioned about Dave Tippett possibly, rumored or otherwise being a GM or in that capacity, because I'm pretty sure in his last year with the Arizona, not Phoenix Coyotes, they promoted him to special advisor or AGM or something.
Yeah,
like
that sounds right.
But I mean, I don't know. I think with Q, he's a guy who's been chomping at the bit to win another cup. Why is he going to wait 3 years for Seattle to roll around?
Yeah.
And that's it, too. And that was another question, is what's going to happen first, the next lockout or the Seattle expansion? I don't even think the arena would be ready for the 2020 season. I think it's the 21 season is.
I think it will be ready, but I think the NHL would be really stupid to put it in the 2020 season, knowing that there could be a lockout.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I guess I don't know. Are we wrapping up on this? Because I have one more question on it.
Sure. Yeah. We gotta get things moving along here.
Yeah. So Joel Quenneville, where does he go next?
Hopefully to San Jose. No, I don't.
No, but realistically.
But realistically, where is he going next?
Yeah.
Wherever he wants. Wherever he wants. Edmonton would be an interesting team, but I feel like they're doing okay enough. I don't know. I don't have my ear really to the ground, but I feel like I don't know how. I think Todd McClellan's seat isn't cold, but I don't think it's as hot as it was at the start of the season.
No, look at Edmonton's record. They're okay.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They're okay.
They're
no,
okay.
I
And
realize that.
this was the team that was supposed to win the cup last year, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I don't know. I think assuming Todd McClellan is fired or mutually parted with, I mean, I don't know. All Q has to do is look at a certain pairing of two numbers and think, oh, that number 97 guy, a pretty good guy.
He's a pretty good guy. I mean, yeah, like who, that's Edmonton would make a lot of sense because who doesn't want to coach McDavid? Obviously, like there's other than a goalie, right? If I'm a coach, I'm looking for goalies. I'm just maybe when you have this,
maybe Q can play goalie for Calgary.
Yeah. I mean, could you see? I mean, Philly's Philly's second in their division right now, but I think Philly's another team that probably takes a hard look at Quenneville, even though because they've had their issues with Hextall at this point. I mean, Ron Hextall's a pretty loyal guy, and we've seen that, but I can't help but wonder if you say, well, yeah, I know you kind of been better lately, but.
Well, look at that. I mean, that's what the Kings did with John Stevens. He won his final game with them. They fired him anyway. Because the motion was already there.
But he was at the bottom of the league compared to second in your division. I mean, that's a huge. There's a big gap in the standings there. I don't know. I feel like there's a couple of teams that obviously I think where their coaches are probably on the hot seat. But again, if you're Quenneville, you're not going to Ottawa. You're not going to Florida. Oh, maybe Florida. I don't know.
I just my hunch tells me that he ends up with Detroit. Because I think Detroit has a lot of good pieces. I still don't think it's Blashill's fault, as mentioned earlier, but I do think he eventually is out, and I think Quenneville would be a decent fit he'd be a decent fit for everybody. But I don't know. I see that relationship working, especially if Yzerman is coming into the fold eventually.
What about Anaheim?
Oh, Anaheim definitely should move on from Carlisle,
because Anaheim's a team that has some decent pieces in place, but they've kind of lost their way a little bit the last 2 years, and you couple that, and Anaheim's got a lot of very good young guys who are either making the team or close to making the team, and I mean we've kind of said that Q is looking for another cup, but at the same time, I think if you see promise in a roster, I think it makes it easier to sign on with the team, which is I think why Mac Babcock signed on with the Leafs.
Here's where I don't see it being Anaheim, is that Bob Murray meddles way too much in his coach's business. And Randy Carlisle's a Bob Murray guy, so it's fine. But
that's true.
I mean, given that Quenneville has clashed the last 2 years with Stan Bowman in Chicago, I feel like Quenneville would go into Anaheim, and when Bob Murray does his Bob Murray things, Quenneville is going to be like, whoa, would you let me be the coach, please? Like, and I don't see that working.
It's interesting, but I still think Anaheim's an interesting team, because I think, obviously the goal is to win a cup, but I don't think that, like, Joel Quenneville, I feel still has a lot of coaching left in him. I don't think he's looking for that immediate cup. He's not looking for the cup next year so he can ride off into the sunset. He's going to be looking at the long term. He's going to want to coach a team that's going to be not only competitive right now and competitive for a while. And I feel like that, that would you would look at a team like Anaheim for that reason, because there is a lot of young guys in the pipeline there. Yeah, they're not great this year, and they have moved away from some of their older players, and they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with Corey Perry at some point. But beyond that, I mean, there's a lot in Anaheim's system to like over, some other teams.
I do feel that in a That's So Sharks moment, when Joel Quenneville got let go by the Avalanche years ago, I was saying when the Sharks let go of Daryl Sutter, let's get Joel Quenneville if he gets fired. And of course, the Sharks bring in Ron Wilson, which wasn't a bad hiring. Ron Wilson did great things for the Sharks. But He fell out of my favor, but nevertheless, gotta give him respect.
He's a guy who just didn't keep up with the game.
Right, right. But and then a month later, Quenneville, or maybe even a week later, Quenneville gets fired, and it's like, oh,
Right.
Curse you, Colorado! Why couldn't this happen sooner? I really hope it's not a situation of Quenneville gets hired somewhere, and then a week later, the Sharks decide to move on from DeBoer. Like, you had your window. Ugh.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Senators in their Uber, because
Speaking of coaches,
yeah,
Marty Raymond.
Poor guy. Like, oh, what a mess.
And it's November. What a mess. And
What a
it's
mess.
November. And we still have 6 more months of this, plus off season next year.
Like, I feel bad because when I look at this team, and everything that's gone on with this team, it's like this is the last thing they needed, right? Was another huge drama thing. But at the same time, like I feel like kind of bad for them at the same time, because who among us have not had these conversations about our bosses?
Hey, hockey jerk. Do you really like the direction that Ian? Can you believe the direction that Ian's putting this podcast into? Because oh my goodness, I haven't been listening to Ian for 3 weeks.
No, me neither. And I was just looking at podcasts.com, and we're 29th in the league.
Oh my god.
It's just like he just sits there and he just says, this is what we're going to talk about, and then no, I can't go on like that. We have a pretty good captain of the ship over here.
Yeah,
but we have to poke fun though.
Oh, we do. I absolutely agree. But I mean, overall, like, I think like this was kind of like much ado about nothing. I mean, it's crappy for the coach, right? Like, I just feel like this is a conversation that shouldn't have been made public, period. And I think it was a crappy thing to do. I understand it was legal to do because you can record in Arizona, one-party consent system or whatever the hell it is, silly Arizona. So I mean, was he wrong to do it? No, technically he was within his legal rights. I mean, obviously it costed him his job, but this sob story that came out after of like, for him, I don't know. I don't buy it. I think it was a crappy thing to do. But I think these, I thought the conversation was entertaining and it was funny, but I mean, obviously these guys, we've all had conversations like this.
Yeah, and I thought it could have been so much worse.
Really could have been.
So much worse. When I listened to it, I thought, oh, this is bad. It's really bad that this is getting leaked and not a good look for the Senators, but this isn't the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. It absolutely, I mean, it would have been a lot worse if they were talking about like other players on the team.
Right.
That would have been
like, if if Duchesne was like, I'm tired of playing with Dzingel because all he does is just shoot the puck, and like if it was like that, it would be so much worse. Or if they were talking about, God forbid, if they were talking about like the head coach or the GM or Eugene. Oh my God, did you see Melnick's video? What was with that sweater he had on?
Right, and I think it could have been worse. Like, I don't know, I don't like it. I think that happens all the time. I think it's crappy. I mean, obviously, if you're the coach getting ripped apart, like, I'm the dude has a family, I'm sure, and I think that's really crappy for him that those grievances were aired in that way. But
it's not gonna, if Ottawa decides to, which they should honestly, fire their entire coaching staff at the end of the year. Where's Marty Raymond gonna go? I mean, statistically, that should be enough for him.
Right.
For him, if it doesn't get better. But I mean, how is he gonna put on his resume? Well, it was because I had crappy players on my team. That's why my special teams were so poor. Like, to hear that no one cares about what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's not a good look for your future aspirations in coaching.
No, and it's like, at least at least most of their best players were in the cab at that time. So like,
Yeah, it's not like it was like Borietsky.
right. Boros
you-
getting traded the next day.
Yeah,
like,
and
could you imagine if
Mike
it was-
Condon.
Could you imagine if it was Borowiecki and he was making fun of the video that you just said? Oh, I can't believe Eugene Melnick made me do this stupid video about,
right.
that would have been bad.
Poor guys.
I just it's still with that video. I can't get over the fact that he was wearing a 12-year-old jersey. Like, that probably kills me more than anything, honestly. Like, and I feel like that's like, I feel like that just epitomizes that whole franchise.
Guys, it's time to answer the most important question of the podcast. Hockey Jerk, do you know what that question is?
Well, I do. Unfortunately, I forgot the theme music for it, but it's time to play. How does this podcast relate to the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Oh, God. God. Well, hi, I'm Nick Kiprios. What happened?
What happened?
Hi, I'm Nick Kiprios, and I'm reporting Ryan Suter to Detroit is a done deal.
How about that Nylander guy?
Did he really? Wow.
He really did, yeah.
He really did.
William Nylander.
Soon to be traded.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
He, Elliot Friedman, friend of the show, Elliot Friedman.
Friend of the show. Good friend. We're like, we're tight.
Reporting today that is very weird phrasing, but reporting that Toronto has asked other teams, what would you give up for Nylander? Very weird. I still think we're looking at a Nylander for Falk plus deal, but I mean, I'm open for other options.
So here's my question. What now happens if you're Kyle Dubas? Like, how do you feel about Kyle Dubas at this point? Because obviously he came out earlier and said, we're going to sign these guys. How do you, I don't know, like, do you feel like Kyle Dubas, obviously with Mark Hunter was in the picture, so obviously, they had to choose a direction and they went with Kyle Dubas. I don't know, how would you rate his job so far? I think, because I think it's like, obviously a lot of people in Toronto are pretty calling for his head, which I think is kind of silly, but where are you guys at on Kyle Dubas?
I think he's doing a fine job. When you consider, I mean, you've got Tavares, you've got Matthews, Marner, Kapanen, even Patrick Marleau. I mean, you've got already, without Nylander, you've got a lot of really good goal scoring on this team. And I just think about, like, if you're trading a guy like Nylander, the diamond of a defenseman that you could bring back, to me, there's almost no way you can't do it.
Yeah. I think he's in a tough spot. Like, what is he going to do? Go ahead.
The fact that it's drawn on this long now, or gone on this long now, to me hurts Nylander's trade value, because just not too much, but a little bit. Just because now you're looking at teams saying, is this kid going to be a problem for us later down the line, the next time we have to do a contract with him, and we're going to give up great assets to get him? And they still have to work out a new contract with him as well.
And that's it,
like,
right? And that's the big one. Yeah,
I think too. With obviously, I think the benefit too of you're absolutely right, Kevin. But I think the benefit of trading him to another team is you take the chance that maybe Kyle Dubas views him one way, but whoever the GM in Carolina is, I can't recall his name. Is it Ron Francis, or is he their coach?
No, he is neither anymore. Their general manager is Don Waddell.
Don Waddell, yes. Okay, so maybe he views Nylander as, that Pasternak player that Nylander views himself as. I feel like, and again, this is just speculation, but I feel like a team looking to trade for him sees his value more comparable to how Nylander views it versus how Dubas views it. That's just my opinion.
I think this is Peter Chiarelli's fault.
Okay.
Because listen here.
I know where you're going. Yeah.
Because if you look at Nylander and you're saying these are my numbers, and I look at Leon Draisaitl, and I'm saying I'm worth that. Give me that. And I love Draisaitl. We know I'm a huge Draisaitl mark, but is he worth that contract? Not really. Like he's a little overpaid for what he brings to the table, especially when he's not with McDavid, which is the problem.
Well, and a lot of that was influenced by that hot playoff run he was on.
Right. No, and I get that. So I think that that's part of the problem. But if you're Kyle Dubas, like I don't really fault Kyle Dubas here. I think that, Cheryl asking in chat, has Nylander been given bad advice? Yeah, I think he has been. Honestly,
Yeah, I was about to ask you who's his agent.
It's a combination of his agent and his father.
Oh, okay.
His father apparently has a big part in this. But if you're Kyle Dubas, I mean, you can't lose sight of the bigger picture. You need to sign Austin Matthews and have some change left over in the couch. Because that Mitch Marner guy is pretty good too. I don't think that Mitch Marner is this infinitesimally better player than than Nylander, but you can't lose both of them, obviously.
Well, and to your point, nobody's talking about how good Jake Gardiner has been the last 2 years either.
Well, Jake Gardner's the GOAT in one way or another. It's always one way or the other. He's either the greatest of all time or he's the GOAT, like in the playoffs last year.
And I just think it's the same thing. If they can't get Jake Gardiner re-signed, then they're going to be, even if they trade for a defenseman now, they're going to be in the same place, 12 months later when they have to, or how many months when they have to let Jake Gardiner go. I think it's gotten to this point. I think you just rip the Band-Aid off and you move on.
Yeah, I don't think I would feel I think it's not a great look for Kyle Dubas because he said he would do it. But at the same time, I mean, I've said we're going to do a lot of things, and then we don't record a show for a week. Have I been fired yet? No. And it was not a week; it was like a month.
Well,
but
if we
fired, no.
If we fired you and then another podcast picked you up, though, would they have to give us a draft pick as compensation?
I don't know how that works. Contact my lawyer; they'll contact you. Yeah, I think Nylander's asking for too much money. I think that if I was him, like, I don't know. I mean, obviously, look at he's gonna get his money. Like, that's the way I feel. But at the same time, I don't, when Shanahan came out and was like, oh, we're in Detroit, we all took pay cuts. Yeah, and your salary cap was $90 million when most teams are paying their teams $40 million, you donkey. I thought that was a really bad analogy, but I don't know. I feel like he would get his money, and and it's like, it's about winning too. Like, are you going to get traded to a team that's primed to win, or are you going to get traded to a team that is still on the road? Like Carolina got off to a good start, but are they a cup favorite? No.
And are you going to get traded to a team that could end up hurting the Maple Leafs in the playoffs? To me,
send them to Boston.
But like we mentioned the Kings earlier and how where's their next wave? I don't know what assets they could give up to get a William Nylander, but that would be a huge young piece to build your team off of going forward.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the exciting thing for us as podcasters is, I could probably list off at least 10 teams that probably should be throwing together a package for Nylander. Like, he is one of the guys, obviously your center is usually the guy who drives the bus, so to speak, but Nylander is one of those guys who can do it from the wing position.
Which makes him even more valuable because
exactly.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned the LA Kings, absolutely. I think if I'm Minnesota Wild's GM, I'm probably looking maybe Coyle and Niederreiter not doing it for me.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe the Florida Panthers, maybe, I don't know.
Oh man, the Florida Panthers are a team that I could discuss for an hour, but not tonight. But there's definitely a team because I feel like, what is wrong with this team? Like, but we'll bench that for now. But it's something that we have to talk about at some point because this team should be so much better than it is. Let's talk some Barracuda because we're running super long and we need to.
This is the longest we've ever run.
I think so too. Like I feel like we're gonna hit 2 hours when this is done.
It's Saturday night. It's fine.
It's Saturday night. It's fine. I don't sleep anymore. Like I don't have to go to sleep because I work nights now. So let's talk about the Barracuda. Barracuda, they're off to the best start in franchise history. I don't know how the 2 losses that just happened have affected that. Kind of the same question we asked earlier about the Sharks, what's working and what's not working so much, and the answer I think for not working is pretty much everything's working. um, Kevin,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead, Kevin. I was going to throw to you.
To me, okay, so these 2 losses to Tucson this weekend suck. I only caught the one today, so I missed how bad it was yesterday. Although I did see the Nick DeSimone hit that he got suspended for, and
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm okay with the losses in respect of, I think the Barracuda can learn from this. Like, Tucson is a top team. We know that. We knew that last year. We know that this year. The Barracuda, I think we knew they'd be good, but I didn't think we'd know they'd be great as they have been. But the Barracuda have also beat the hell out of the Stockton Heat this season. So I wanted to see this team go up against another high caliber team. Unfortunately, they failed the test right now, but it's November. So you got to beat these teams in April, May, and June. But as long as the Barracuda can learn from this, I think they're going to be fine. And what I like, I tried to give Roy Summers some props on Twitter. There is an echo. I do hear it. Shoot.
I don't hear
it. I like that Roy Sommer during the winning streak still switched things up. Like, the winning streak should not have anything to do with development in terms of, or it shouldn't stymie development. Like, you shouldn't be keeping things together just to keep a winning streak alive. Like, I like that he's looking at different options. Coach Sommer's looking at different options and trying to mix and match and make sure everything works at all times. So, go ahead, because I got to figure this out.
I excuse me. Oh God, this is the worst time. Okay. I think too, one thing that comes to mind right off the hop, remember the guy who was the throw-in for Erik Karlsson, Francis Perron, leading the way in points. Who would have thunk it? Obviously, you're getting contributions from the guys you expected to get contributions from. Obviously, with Gambrell, when he is with the Barracuda, he's scoring over point per game, and obviously we expected a lot from Jaden Hogwarts, which is always nice to see. And I think too, an underrated aspect of this team has been obviously the reemergence of Jeremy Waugh. I think the fact that he's been able to be healthy again has really helped this team kind of have some offense from the back end, especially with the loss of Heed and Ryan and now Shimmick. Like, the Barracuda are hurting for points from the point, as I like to say. And, with Jeremy Waugh, let's hope that they can get that, obviously. And, somebody I was obviously very complimentary of. I want to know what Kevin thinks, because Kevin and I had a offline chat about this. But what do you think about Max Latunov now that you get to see him in person?
I still want to see more. I like Max Latunov. I think the thing that needs to be talked about more is how great his backhand is. Like, that guy's got a wonderful Vinny Domfus-esque backhand that he really doesn't mind throwing out there. I liked Max Latunov as a prospect even when he was with Blues. I think it was the Blues. He's not like the star of the show here with this team. There really isn't a star. It's all by committee, but I do think that he's a bright point, and I do think that he's a guy that will get called up at some point. As long as he stays the course, I think he will see time with the Sharks this season. It might not be much time, but especially if Peter DeBoer kind of puts Chartier in his doghouse. Like, I feel like that's a thing that's going to happen, because he usually does that with young guys. You might see Latunov get the next call up before Dylan Gambrell.
I think for me, the thing that I notice is, and this is something that I've seen all the way back to the rookie showcases. It seems like Max Latunov can't lose a faceoff. Like, it seems like. It really seems like I'm almost certain he's lost a faceoff before, but I can't I feel like every time I see him, he's always winning faceoffs. And I liked how you mentioned that the backhand he has, because there was the game in the rookie showcase against Vegas where he pretty much, dangled in a phone booth and, jacked it upstairs for a goal. And I remember thinking too, like, wow, this guy can rip it, and I think too, we saw last year, guys got hurt, guys were underperforming. O'Regan got the call. Who's to say Latunov can't be in the same boat as that?
Yeah, and good thing Latunov got hurt last weekend, I believe it was, but he's back. I think he played both games this weekend, so that's a crisis averted because Manny Viederer's out for a little bit.
Yep. Max Latunov, just to jump on that, I mean, Max Latunov's probably been one of my favorite players to watch on the Barracuda this year. Like I want a Max Latunov jersey. That's how much I like this guy. And he was a guy, like, even in camp, I said, like, obviously it didn't work out because I think the day after my article came out that he was sent back to the minors. But I said, he could be a dark horse for that center spot because of his play. And I really like him. And like what Jerk said, him getting a call up would not surprise me at all at some point this season. But I've been really happy with him. Obviously, that line that they had him on with for a while. I mean, obviously the lines have been jumbled a little bit because of injuries and whatnot. Another standout for me this season is the reemergence of Nick DeSimone, who I was very down on at the end of the year last year, and most of last year, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
And he's really, he's kind of found his game again. And I think it's just, again, it's not being miscast. I think he was miscast last year. I think he was asked for more than he was capable of. And, Adam Haluka sure pounded the crap out of us, especially yesterday. But, bringing Wood over has really helped stabilize that top pair. And and that's the other thing with the Barracuda for me is the question we always asked was, well, who's going to play defense? Who's going to be the defenseman? What's the defense going to look like? The defense has been great for the Barracuda this year. It's been great.
And continuing real quick on why I think that the Tucson games were a good test for them. I don't think the defense was tested too much, which isn't a bad thing, because last year the defense was awful for the Barracuda.
It was awful.
And they needed some kind of confidence boost going into this year, because really, you mentioned Wood is about the only real change that was made. Getting Jeremy Waugh back, obviously, is mostly a change because he missed most of the year.
Yeah,
but
him and Fitzy have been great. Like, him and Fitzgerald together have been fantastic.
Yeah,
way better than I thought they would be.
It all got split up tonight, but when you lose 5-0 last night, why not just switch it all up and just see what happens? I'm sure they'll be back together again soon. But DeSimone and Fitzgerald being injured last year, and Keaton Middleton being a new professional player who was not under contract until a month ago or 6 weeks ago. These guys really needed a boost in confidence instead of going, if the Barracuda struggled this year to start off the gate, they'd be like, here we go again, and probably doubting themselves as professional hockey players. Nick DeSimone, really bad year last year. But he does look great this year, and you can see it on all of them. Their confidence is helped by the fact that the Barracuda have had the puck most of the season. But nevertheless, those are building blocks. Those are steps in the right direction so that when you go up against the teams like Tucson or Grand Rapids is kind of in down, but I'm trying to think, like Chicago, I think is doing pretty well. Texas Stars went to the Cup Finals last year, and the Barracuda handled them. Completely handled them. Like, those are good building blocks. The defense has been strong. Goaltending's been great. Goaltending's been really, really solid. I'd like to see another team that I'd like to kind of see them how they would do against now is Bakersfield, because Bakersfield just got Jesse Puljujärvi and Kailer Yamamoto sent down. So I think that would be a team that I'd like to see how they match up against as well with that addition.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to test. I mean, obviously those guys are two very potent shooters. But I think the defense, like we've kind of said, has been really rock solid. And, enough can't be said. Between Bebo and Coronash, they've been stopping just about everything, save for the game last night against Tucson. But We talked about how this Barracuda team was going to be last year. We said how they were going to be fun coming into this year, but I think I would maybe like them to see them get maybe one more defenseman just as a just in case kind of thing. But this team, I don't know, with how many goals they're scoring and how good the goaltending has been, I think the sky is the limit for them.
Yeah. I mean, I thought they would be fun. I didn't know if they would be fun and good though, and they're both. So far, Bibo and Cornash have kind of just split the net. Are you? I mean, I guess you can't really complain with how they've played, but I feel like Bibo's been the more consistent of the two, I would say.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's expected because he is kind of the de facto starter,
right?
But at the same time, I like that they're getting Cornash starts. I mean, it gets him games in a professional level, obviously, but it also allows Bibo to hypothetically rest up for a long playoff run.
I mean, because Bibo was doing great, but then he got hurt in the right before the playoffs, and then in the playoffs, and it was like, oh man.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, remember 16-17? How many games Troy Grosnick played, and then they had to, they go out and they had the model, and he wasn't cutting it, and then they had Clark the Bumblebee for a while, and
I forgot about it, Clark Saunders, yeah. I've been surprised at how many starts Cornash has gotten, but I haven't had a problem with it.
Yeah, I don't think I do either. I think I feel like at some point though you have to kind of pick a guy. Maybe you don't. Maybe again, how many AHL games have I coached? 0. But
I was gonna say, who I think Grand Rapids was using Caro and Pasquale in a tandem for most of the year. They won the Calder Cup, if I'm not mistaken. I know they did go with Caro for most of the playoffs, but I do think Pasquale still got a couple of starts, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and even when we played the Heat, we saw both Rittich and
maybe that's who I'm thinking of, Rittich and Gillies.
Yeah, and Gillies.
But Cornash, though, for me, has looked. I've been very pleased with him. I wasn't sure how a 20-year-old European goalie was going to fare. It's not his first time in North America, but first time as a pro in North America, because he did play in the USHL, I think for Lincoln. But he's looked solid. It's been a very seamless transition between Bibo and Cornash in starts, and I do think that the starts that Cornash has had haven't hurt Bibo's It doesn't look like Bibo's confidence has been
right. No, that's fair.
Which is when just talking about Aaron Dell and Martin Jones earlier in the show, I do think that it's all a confidence thing with both those guys, but I can't help Jones seeing Dell getting the support of the coach or the team or whatever, publicly like that.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening with the Barracuda. Bibo just goes about his business like a pro, and he knows his starts will come. He probably knows his playoff starts will come, and all is well.
Yeah, I mean, Cornash has been great so far. I mean, and he's one of a few. He's one of the first goalies that we've really had to make a solid tandem, because when you look at what we've had before with either was it. Grosnick.
Even when it was Dell and Grosnick was terrible that year. He had a sub 900 save percentage, so it wasn't Dell and Grosnick, it was Dell.
Right, exactly. And so now when you looked at, especially I look back at the Armalis experience, and Armalis single-handedly lost the Barracuda a bunch of games, even when they were amazing. And it's nice to not have that this year. So I'm liking what the Barracuda are doing. How do you guys feel about AHL TV if you're using it so far? I'm just curious how your experience has been. Just quickly.
Go ahead.
I have not used it. I cannot publicly disclose how I've watched AHL games.
Okay. So I think it's been good. I do think they still have things to work on, which is surprising to me because it has been over a month since this got launched. Last night there was no audio at all for the Barracuda side, and I think part of that is because it was the Tucson Convention Center. but then at the same time it was, well, the KDOW feed was fine.
Right.
The radio feed was fine. So why is AHL TV not working? Tonight, my biggest thing has been the audio only coming out of the left speaker and not both speakers, which I've been going continually back and forth reporting with them on, including tonight. It seems like they fixed it for some buildings, but not for all. So it's a work in progress, but I do enjoy. I still think the price point is excellent for what you get, and you get. I mean, you get to see so many players you wouldn't otherwise see. I love it.
Yeah, like I feel like compared to previous incarnations, like I feel like the video is actually better. Like one of the big notices that I've noticed is the better quality video compared to previous.
I will say, Ian, I have not had any issues with since the opening weekend. I have no issues with interrupted streams. Yeah. I don't know how it is for you up north.
Nope,
but
it's been great. Like I feel like for the price point, it's been great. Yeah, there's some issues that I'd like to see them work out. You know, some of the audio issues for sure. Also
the clocks that don't work.
The clocks that don't work. Exactly. That's where I was going.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall though, like I'm not upset with the purchase. I think it's been great.
There you go. AHL.TV. Be our sponsor. We're plugging you. We like your service.
Yeah.
Subscribe to that. Subscribe to us. It's all good.
I want to finish on this because we've apparently passed the 2-hour mark, and I need to stop this at some point. I did watch Ryan Merkley play in Sault Ste. Marie. I think it was last Friday. Just some quick thoughts on Ryan Merkley. I think he pretty much played like I expected him to. He was a little frustrated by the end of the game. He broke his stick after getting kind of exploited on the game-winning goal. But I can understand, I guess, the frustration because Guelph was up on the Hounds 2 games in a row where they had a pretty significant lead that the Hounds would erase and then win the game. But I thought, you know, like his defensive work is a little, obviously does leave a little something to be desired, but he's good and he's nice. You know, he played good, I thought. Like I didn't think he was bad. Yeah, he got kind of opened up on a couple of shots, but all in all, you know, in the offensive zone where you want him to be good, he was good, and I was impressed by his showing, and I wish I could see more live hockey of him. Unfortunately, he's in the wrong conference. So yeah, that's good. Thanks. Ryan Merkley's great. If you go on my Instagram, there are I took a couple of like just quick videos of just some play. And I have some pictures too, if you want to check those out. Other than that, though, I think we should probably get out of here. So final thoughts. Kevin, go first.
Okay, the final thought is basically just going to be an extension of the last topic, which is got to give some love to Jeff Viel, Evan Weinger, and John McCarthy, the fourth line that is now kind of like the second, third line for the team. Like that line's been great. You've got power forward Jeff Viel, you've got the veteran responsible center John McCarthy, and then you've got feisty, speedy, super fast winger Evan Weinger. Like they've been fantastic. Like they've been the big surprise for me, this team, that line. And also with the Barracuda, something I noticed from going to the home game last weekend, or one of the home games last weekend, was this team gets it with their crowd. Like I've never seen that as much with the previous incarnations of the Barracuda, but like Kevin Fitzgerald is like, you know, he just like he knows the fans who are watching him, and he'll like, you know, he'll interact with them. And Evan Weinger like just seems like the most humble, sincere guy on the interviews that I've ever watched. But like this team, just the new kids, they get it, and I love it. And that's what you need out of your minor league teams, is that relationship with your fan base and with the community and stuff. And it's been awesome. It's been great being a Barracuda fan this season, and I continues, and I hope everybody comes out to more games. So I'm at Kevin Lacey 22, and on to you, Hockey Jerk.
Okay. Final thoughts for starters. Barracuda. We thought they were going to be fun, kind of okay. Turns out they're fun and really good. Kind of hard to complain there. I'm hoping they keep it rolling. Obviously, what's crucial for these guys is the more games they play and the more games they're playing well in, it bodes well for any future games they may play in the NHL. It's that extra sliver of confidence that you can put into their caps. That's obviously good. Sharks are kind of struggling right now, but they're still probably the best team in the Pacific Division. And I think by game 82, a good chunk of this podcast's concerns will be moot. Here's hoping. Joel Quenneville, if you're out there, think about what you do next. And lastly, I want to say I was on Facebook, and the NHL Facebook page posted an article about Sasha Barkov, and it was in Russian. Therefore, Russian collusion still continues, just like with the EA Sports video game and the Goldobin trade, and I'm sick of it. And if you want to know how sick of it I am, you can follow me on Twitter at @hockey_jerk.
Alrighty. I just want to quickly say thanks for everyone who tuned in tonight after our long hiatus. The goal now is, now that I've kind of had my work schedule sorted out, is that we are going to come at you either on Friday or Saturday night, provided there's not a Sharks game screwing that up for us. So hopefully we're going to get back to our weekly usual selves, and now that everything's kind of sorted out. And I apologize for us being gone for as long as we were. It wasn't intended. It was unfortunately just life happens. So thank you guys for coming back and listening to these guys trash me like they're in an Uber.
And thank you guys for continuing to ask about the show while we were off air. Like, that really is important to me and to both of these guys to know that you're still supporting us. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, so absolutely. Like the questions of, hey, where are you guys? I mean, that obviously makes me feel good, makes me realize that we definitely need to get back on, because people are actually missing us. And I love your poor taste in podcasts, but Mom, if you're out there, we're back. All right, guys. You can find me at Ian Blogs Hockey on the Twitter machine, at Ian Blogs Hockey on the Instagram. Like I said, I got some videos of Merkley, including I think the play where the goal happened on the overtime. I don't know. Check it out. Other than that, have a good night. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.